Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Hijr, chapter 15, verses 22 to 31 will be covered in this presentation. These are the references, and this is our contact in case anyone wishes to contact us regarding any query or question. Recap so far. The Quran is a complete book, and it calls itself Al-Kitab and declares that what is noted within its folds is perspicuous and makes things clear to rationally thinking human beings. Those who resort to kufr waste their worldly life in the pursuit of things associated with physical existence and thus live at a sub-animalistic level. Why Quran calls it sub-animalistic level is because animals follow instincts, which are they are born with, it is in their nature. Whereas human beings have choice and intent, and if they do not use their choice and intent within the values of the Quran, then they do not bring out the best which is within themselves, and they live life at an animalistic level, thinking that the life ends with death. So that is the point which Quran makes here. Such a life always ends in regrets and disappointments towards the end of their stay in this world. Events in the human world follow known laws and values, and those who make an effort can find their details and thus benefit from them in their life. The time of respite is kept within the functioning of nations so that people can learn from their mistakes and mend their ways in time. Those who pass the message of Allah to others should never be fearful of being called insane or mad. The reason is that if people do not understand the message to whom we are passing the message, they are going to react and they are going to accuse you that you have come with something new. Our life is fine. We do not think that we need this message. So this is part of people's reaction to which the Quran points our attention. People take time to accept the guidance of the Quran. So we need to give time to others for this message to sink in, and they should start thinking rationally. Still, there will be people who will not opt for the message of the Quran, and we should accept it that way, because Quran has stated that La ikraha fi Deen, that in the matter of Deen there is no compulsion. It is people's choice. If they want to rationally accept the message of the Quran and its guidance, then they will benefit from it. And those who do not follow it, of course, they will be in loss. People who look for miracles in worldly life do not understand the functioning of the law of requital. In the human world, there is nothing miraculous. Each self is responsible for its deeds, and this is where we need to remain focused. And we can verify it. We have gone over it a number of times, that in the world, we can see very clearly the law of cause and effect working. And as far as law of requital is concerned, if we look at our own psyche, then we will see that whatever we do in life, that leaves an impact on our memory, on our mind. The Quran is preserved and protected for all times. Mu'minin need to make it part of their self-sense of being in order to strengthen their iman. And this is important because a lot has been written on the Quran as translations and their expositions. Many of these do not represent what is given in the Quran. And in this regard, the books by Ghulam Ahmad Parvez are extremely helpful because these deal with the system of Deen. And unless we look at the Quran as a system of Deen, we cannot benefit from the Quran, because it is not a book to earn some kind of a reward by reading it. It is a book to be followed to establish the system of Deen. There are enough resources for sustenance kept in the planet for all times for mankind. We need to use our intellect to utilize the available resources in the era in which we exist and make efforts to discover more and turn these resources, for example, agricultural, into more sustainable practices. Equitable distribution of these means of sustenance is the responsibility of Mu'mineen, and they should apprise the rest of mankind to come to this to alleviate poverty in the world. We see poverty in the world in a large scale, and the gap between rich and poor keeps increasing. And the reason is that people who are at the top do not resort to equitable distribution of these economical resources. The Quran draws our attention to this aspect repeatedly, that these resources are for everyone in the world, not for the few. And we need to have an effective distribution system in the world where all needs are met of all human beings so that they can then get on to the job of getting their self developed. All means of sustenance are for the use of whole of mankind, and these need to be distributed within the confines of the permanent values of the Quran. Now let us go to the first verse of this talk, 1522. One of the signs of sustenance is the provision of rain to support life on the planet. وَأَرْسَلْنَا الرِّيَاحَ لَوَاقِعَ فَأَنْزَلْنَا مِنَ السَّمَاءِ مَاءً فَأَسْقَيْنَاكُمُوهُ وَمَا أَنْتُمْ لَهُ بِخَازِنِينَ. For this purpose we send winds which are laden with vapors of water, contrary to windstorms. Then we send down rain from these clouds, and water is used for you to drink. These sources remain with us, these do not stay with you. Now, there are some further reflections on this verse, important sign to which the Quran has drawn our attention in this verse. First is ponder on this system of the creator of nature, that dry land comprises 1/5 of planet Earth. Since the time that life has appeared on it, this is continuing to provide sustenance to it all. The production of sustenance from it corresponds to a specific proportion according to the laws of nature. That though proportionately land is less and water is more, but this is to create that hydrological cycle proportionally so that water reaches every part of the planet. And this aspect we can study and find out that how the hydrological cycle works on the planet Earth. And this is an amazing way of providing water to every part of the world. Now it is up to us how to store this water and then utilize it for our needs. If it had so happened that it had brought out all of its treasures in one go, then future generations would have died of starvation. And we can see that in every part of the earth there are enough means of sustenance. Then as a whole the world has enough means of sustenance for everyone as of today and also for the future generations. Furthermore, if exploitative forces seizing the land had started to take out sustenance from it, and all this risk was put into their control, then what would have happened to the rest of Allah's creation? For example, in today's world, there is a lot of accumulation and hoarding of these means of sustenance in some parts of the world. But despite that, it does reach to other parts where there is a scarcity of it. And wherever there is a scarcity, and if we look at the way the system functions, there are human hands behind it. So these are the things to which Quran draws our attention in various verses. Through the hydrological cycle, clouds are formed on a gigantic scale, and this rain then covers different parts of planet Earth to provide fresh water. Here an important aspect is noted by Allah, وَمَا أَنْتُمْ لَهُ بِخَازِنِينَ. These treasures are with us, i.e. in our control and not in human control. And this is a very powerful statement which needs a lot of our reflection and even research. This is something which needs further pondering by us, whether human beings can control the weather and climate on a large scale. These kind of things are mentioned, and there is some aspect of seeding of clouds in a localized fashion. But for us, the students of the Quran, this needs more research, and we need to look into it and collect some data on it. It is possible that some local interference is attempted, but this verse gives this a different complexion. All that is being pursued by the system of Batil in the name of climate change and control of the world needs more information. Here the Quran has laid down this limit that there are areas of the world which are beyond the reach of human hands. For example, the existence of death points to the finite side of our physical life. The universe itself has finitude built into it. So there are a number of questions which arise through this verse which we need to look at it. And in today's world, for example, there's a lot of emphasis being put on climate change, but nobody talks of poverty, whereas poverty is the one to which the Quran draws our attention. So we have to balance these things and take the human statements, particularly the statements made by the system of Batil, very skeptically and not to believe them unless we got adequate data to support it. Next verse is 1523. Human life and death follow no laws. وَإِنَّا لَا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي وَنُمِيتُ وَنَحْنُ الْوَارِثُونَ. And everything gets life according to our law, and death also comes according to this. From these explanations, it is clear that whatever means of sustenance there is in the universe, we are its possessor. You are not its master that you can wrap it all up for yourself. It's a very interesting verse in which the pronoun of our has been used 4 times. وَإِنَّا لَنَحْنُ نُحْيِي وَنُمِيتُ وَنَحْنُ الْوَارِثُونَ. And the 3 important points noted here, that the life comes from Allah and the death also comes from Him. And He is the one who is, whatever is happening in this world, He is the one who inherits everything. نَحْنُ الْوَارِثُونَ. Some further reflections. This verse emphatically puts before our eyes the fact of our existence as human beings. We come to this world through a well-known process of our birth, i.e. a biological phenomenon. And if we see that our body is being recycled as well through this world, just like trees and animals and everyone else, whereas the self is the separate entity. Then we die, which is universal for all human beings. It also follows physical laws, i.e. biological things take birth, grow, exist for a specified duration as per the law, and then wither, to be replaced by others. Human physical existence also follows the same pattern, nothing different, i.e. all animals go through this cycle. This point is very important to observe as we live our life, because that puts emphasis on ourself and its development. It draws our attention away from our physical existence, and we do not get totally engrossed in looking after the players and aspects of our physical self. However, in the case of man, there is another important aspect of the existence of his self-nafs, which each one gets as a function of the divine energy. We have gone through this point previously as well, that the ability to make choices has come through divine energy. This provides choice and intent and is governed by the law of requital and the law of respite. This self is that entity which the Quran addresses from beginning to the end and then presents itself as a guidance so that this self can turn itself into a new creation by following the procedure noted in the Quran. At the level of the self, we cannot reproduce. I will say it again, very important for us to understand and also communicate to others. At the level of the self, we cannot reproduce, because the self does not have the ability to reproduce itself. That is why Allah's self is the one as a being. He cannot have any son. And this is important to understand, that at a self's level, its integrity is absolute. It has its own absolute integrity and unity, and it cannot reproduce itself. And the proof is very simple. Whatever qualifications in this life we have, we cannot pass it on to our children. Children come as animals in this world and then they grow. But of course they have a self, and as a result of that they have choice and intent. The concluding part of the verse sums up the reality of human existence, where the Quran declares that وَنَحْنُ الْوَارِثُونَ. Death does not mean that it all ends and nothing proceeds forward. Do not think like that. This life and death is part of a grand scheme of Allah. So Allah is there all along. So we should not think that with death Allah has ceased to exist, or since we have ceased to exist, so Allah does not matter. His existence does not matter. No, He is there, and by virtue of our divine energy, we are not going to go anywhere. So law of requital is going to make sure that we bear the consequences of whatever we do. Since Allah owns everything, and surprising with the guidance of Allah and then following it will make us eligible for all those eminences to which the Quran has drawn our attention. We have gone through this point previously as well, that this life is not meant to be miserable and awkward and full of fear and huzn. This life is meant to be free from fear and huzn. It is meant to be stress-free, in case we understand the way system functions, and if we establish the system of Deen, because then we will be bringing out our best. And once that best comes out, the pleasure of that in itself will make our life very peaceful and full of prosperity. If we wish to benefit from this aspect, then we need to acquire that self, which then becomes Allazina Yarisuna al-Firdausa hum fiha khalidun. And over here, see Allazina Yarisuna. Then, because we have worked for that life and our self has developed on those lines, so nobody can take it away. This is our achievement. This is what we have become. So, for example, even in this life, once we, through the man-made system, once we acquire a qualification, even if we don't have a piece of paper, that qualification becomes part of ourself. That knowledge which has gone into ourself, nobody can take it away. It cannot be stolen. We cannot be robbed of that. Inherit the eternal life through their own efforts. 1524, the word is an arena to bring out our latent potentials. Having knowledge of this is part of our existence. وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْنَا الْمُسْتَقْدِمِينَ مِنْكُمْ وَلَقَدْ عَلِمْنَا الْمُسْتَأْخِرِينَ. And we know who among you on the basis of their skills and tricks will advance ahead, and in this way are those who take the means of production into their control and who will lag behind. This verse points to both physical aspect as well as the aspects of the self, and we will go through some of these points next. Here the Quran has drawn our attention to the importance of our creation as responsible beings. A great principle has been described in this verse, which is not just confined to the acquisition of sustenance, it encompasses all facets of human life. Allah has shown the paths of wrong and right to man. He has bestowed him with the ability to choose whichever path he wishes. The world in which we live, of course, most of human beings do not have many choices because of the confines of the wrong system. But in a truly system of Deen, where Allah's laws are the ones which govern the management and organization of the system, of the society, we will see that how much the spectrum in which human beings can make their choices will be far, far wider, and of course with the assurance of the hereafter as well. So the fear of death will disappear. Together with this, he also blessed him with this capacity that he can go on this highway of life with whatever speed he wishes. He can make endeavors to whatever degree he wishes. The highway of life is a racetrack for individuals and nations. Whoever wishes to forge ahead can advance forward, and whoever wishes to lag behind can do so. And in another verse, Quran has decreed, "Kullan numiddu haulai wa haulai min atai rabbika wa ma kana atau rabbika mahsura." Kullan numiddu, that is, whatever blessings and bounties have been placed in the world, these are given by Allah. These are bestowed by Allah, atai rabbika, and these are related to, of course, the system of rububiyyah, which includes both physical self as well as our intellectual self. And وَمَا كَانَ أَطَاعُ رَبِّكَ مَحْظُورًا, and these are not limited to any particular group of people. These are for everyone, whether they are Muslims, non-Muslims, whatever denomination to which they belong. In the physical world, we can witness results in proportion to human collective efforts. And we can see that even within the man-made system, people who understand the system, and of course it's good and bad, and they can benefit from it. Those who do not, then they lag behind. To whatever extent someone makes efforts, his place will be definitely defined accordingly. The fundamental teaching of the Quran is that the one who advances forward should do so, and the one who wishes to remain behind should remain behind. And this is important, that even while living within the man-made systems, we should see that how can we benefit, and particularly from this aspect, that how can we benefit so that we can promote the cause of the system of Deen. And in any case, as and when Deen comes, it has to grow out of, it has to emerge out of the capitalist system or the man-made system. So these are the things which we should keep in mind while we are going through these verses, that our own awareness should be of what is going on in the world and what is different from what Quran is asking us to look at. The speed or slowness of his progress will be defined in proportion to his deed. The spheres of his limits and freedom will be established according to the dynamism of his endeavors. This word is an arena in which to strive forward as declared. And the Quran says, وَفِي ذَلِكَ الْفَلْيَتَنَافِسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. And over here the Quran has said that make efforts, try to understand the system in which you are living. Some part of it you did not create it, but still you can make use of it. Those who wish to go ahead should strive within the guidance of the Quran. Our developed self will become evidence of its own developed state, leaving no doubt lurking in our hearts. So what is happening in this world, as we know, and the way our self develops, we cannot remain in any doubt that whether our self is developing or not. And this is where the Quran helps us. When we look at our own self's development and the way we behave and manifest our attributes in the world, in the outer world, that in itself becomes an evidence that our self is developing. Even mere understanding of the Quran, which we are going through these verses, is increasing the horizon of our consciousness. Continuing this verse, the ability to advance and to develop the self is possible for everyone. To whatever extent someone progresses further, consider it as being that he will become proportionately nearer to Allah. And the Quran says, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. They will be the ones who will get nearer to that model of Allah. They will understand the model of Allah, and because they will be manifesting those attributes of Allah, they will themselves realize that they are getting better and better with the passage of time. Those who strive hard will be ahead and nearer. And we can figure it out, because when we talk to other people who haven't come to the Quran, we can differentiate very clearly the difference between the understanding which we have acquired and others have yet to acquire. And these are the things to which we should draw the attention of others, that there is a better way of living even in the same world, but with a better thought process. The ambition to advance ahead of others is contained within man. And human beings are very competitive, and they are created like that to be competitive, because if they are not competitive, I don't think we will be able to change the face of the earth the way human beings have done it. Allah does not discourage this ambition. He encourages it. He does not ridicule it, rather appreciates it. He applauses those who advance ahead. And this is inbuilt, because if we are working hard and making use of even the man-made system, within the means, we can make some progress. Of course, those who have better means, they can go far ahead. The children who have a better start are going to be ahead of those who do not have any very poor start. And this is then incumbent on them that who have a better start, they should think of those who are lagging behind and work for the system of Deen. So that is part of the understanding of this verse. He distributes rewards among them, but in the arena of advancement, he differentiates and distinguishes, and this differentiation is defined according to the ideology of life. Very important, we know it, there are only two ideologies of life. One ideology says that the life goes beyond death, and based on that, then one acquires Iman, and then one does solid deeds. As a result, their solid side of their character comes out. The other is that the life ends with death, never mind what they say. And I know that religious beliefs say that they still believe that I believe that there is a life in the hereafter, but they live their life as if it will end with death. So these are the two different ideologies of life. We have gone over it previously as well. One ideology of life is that in which the aim of living is the acquisition of conveniences of this world, no matter how these are acquired. There is no higher purpose than this. This is termed as secularism. The Quran proclaims this to be kufr and states, Al-Hakumut Takasur Hatta Zurtumul Maqabir, if you go through the second verse as well. And that Takasur means greed, it means pursuing something which is accumulated and holding on to something which is beyond your need. So greed and accumulation fall within this trait. And the Quran says that if you do not have high purpose of life, if you think life will end with death, then greed will definitely be part of your pursuit. And you will try to accumulate, and you will only think about your own benefit. And that kind of a thinking will not entitle you anything in the hereafter. And this is an important point to be kept in mind. There is another arena of life in which, in order to advance forward and excel each other in righteous deeds for the good of mankind, and Quran says, "Yu'minuna billahi wal yawmil akhir wa ya'muruna bil ma'ruf wa yanhauna 'anil munkar wa yusari'una fil khairat." And that is the important, that you should make an effort. If you want to compete, compete in doing good, compete in doing solid deeds. In fact, come together and do it together rather than just do it individually, because doing it individually is part of religious outlook. See, over here the Quran itself has pointed out that that is how your best will come out. Your solid side will come out. Those potentials, latent potentials which are kept within you and which have the ability to take care of the mankind. So those are there to stand up for haq and to stand against batil. So all those potentials are there. And over here, of course, Quran says, in this process of pursuing this goal, we should promote good maruf, which is given in the Quran, and ask others and forbid evil munkar, which brings down, which slows down humanity, which goes against the development of the self. Hasten in good deeds together. Next verse 1525, the system of Rububiyyat became established in the initial era, hence it can be established again. And over here Quran says, Inna Rabbaka huwa yahshuruhum innahu hakimul alim. But our system of Rububiyyat cannot allow this kind of differentiation and division. We will gather everyone together at one place, and this will take place according to that law of ours, which is totally based on knowledge and wisdom. Verse 1525, this verse points to the future possibility. As we know, the Quran invites us to constantly remain focused on Rububiyyat so that we understand the issues involved on the road to the establishment of Deen in this world. Here it has put emphasis on the fact that Allah as Rabb will ensure that our efforts do not go wasted and people will come together for the need of their own Rububiyyat. This whole system of the universe and the creation of man within it, and the way human beings manage their affairs without the guidance of the Quran, it gives an impression to many that purposeless, it is meaningless, and there is no higher value to the creation of human beings. This is the job of those who understand these points within the Quran to pass it on to them rationally so that they can understand it. And they cannot, of course, pass on to others unless their own selves are developed. There is a prerequisite to it, because once we understand the nature of a developed self, then it is easier to explain to others and tell them that the world which we have created, it needs more of mu'mineen so that they can come together and bring a change. And human beings do notice the misery and the fear and the anxiety and reason which is in the world. And if we logically present the option which the Quran has given us and then explain to them that Allah's help becomes available if we all work together towards this goal, and things do start falling in place gradually and, of course, very deliberately. Human beings who are rational thinkers come to it. And these are the people whose rational side is extremely developed. They are the ones then manage the affairs of the system of Deen. Iman in the existence of Rububiyyat, defining the aim of human life and its functioning, means that we are fully cognizant of this fact that each and every solid deed of ours is leaving a mark on ourselves. And this process will lead to producing tangible results at a later stage, some point in the near future. And these points become part of our conviction as we see the changes taking place in our own life as we follow in this path. This path has evidence built into it. And Quran provides us that kind of a lens, that kind of an insight where we can recognize it as well. The universe is created for this purpose, that our solid deeds do not go wasted. And Quran has all along stated as a permanent value, كَذَلِكَ نَجْزِي الْمُحْسِنِينَ, that this is the way your deeds are going to bring out the results. So this is something which needs our very focused and close attention. Another aspect is noted here that the class division which has been created by those human beings who hold reins of power and who place themselves higher despite being equal with respect to those who are lower will disappear when the system of rububiyyat becomes established. All human beings stand in one line only. And this is an instruction for us, the students of the Quran, that equality as human beings is absolute and we cannot differentiate one human being from another on any basis, gender, race, or class, or color, or geographical location and nationality. In fact, all these nationalities and parties in any case are against the Quran. But the point over here is that while we recognize that, we have to point others' attention to this as well. And the only thing which differentiates between human beings is their outlook of their self, that ideologically in what system they believe, whether they think that the life will go beyond death or it will not go beyond death. And even if they think that the life will not go beyond death and live their life, they are entitled to the basic needs of their life. They have to, if they are making efforts and to have a decent life for themselves and for their children, the system should allow them to have. And this is something which we need to figure out in detail. By concluding the verse with two divine attributes, Innahu Hakeemun Alim, we are asked to acquire knowledge of the need for rububiyyat and then look at aspects of its functioning. So these two attributes point to this fact that whatever knowledge we have to apply it intelligently, rationally within the values of the Quran. And of course, we have to understand the knowledge which is prevailing even in the man-made system and see how it is being applied. So both aspects should be before our eyes when we are going through the teachings of the Quran and getting trained. We need to make efforts to acquire these attributes and then manifest these till these become embedded in the constitution of ourself. Being fully aware of these attributes is part of our education and training as students of the Quran. The important point over here is that if it becomes part of our daily living, our daily thought process, then we don't get frustrated. We know that the path which we are following is the one which will lead us to that destination which this path promises. And there is a time involved. There is no doubt in that. And as more people will join in, the things will start becoming clearer and clear, and these will manifest their results. So over here, what Quran has said is that this is going to happen at some point in time. It happened previously as well, and it is going to happen again in case we keep making efforts. Next is 2 verses 15, 26 to 27. We gain knowledge and remain focused. لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ وَالْجَانَّ خَلَقْنَهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ مِنْ نَارٍ سَمُومٍ. And this is that reality which has previously been described in the tale of Adam in a metaphysical style and which is again repeated. This is a fact that the origin of the birth of man was from dark clay which is drying crackles. And Quran has called it elsewhere as Teen-e-Lazib, from which the first cell came into existence. And then it should be made clear that before the creation of man, there was immense heat on planet Earth. Hence, initially such a creation appeared which had a great ability to tolerate heat. Now, drawing our attention to an aspect of our creation, our overall creation in the world, the creation of man is a mystery on which a great deal has been written. Religious books have also tried to give their own opinions, which are all at variance with each other. It's very interesting that if all these religions have the same origin, why did it all vary? Because human hands or human minds, they tempered them. The Quran has also drawn our attention to some aspects of it. The book titled The Human Self and Iblees by Ghulam Ahmad Parvez has noted details as described in the Quran in different places. It's worth going through it. Allama Parvez has dealt with it in detail. Here the Quran has noted that the beginning of life on earth is from clay and it's coming in contact with water. There is a verse in the Quran at another place it is noted, وَجَعَلْنَا مِنَ الْمَاءِ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ حَيٍّ, that Allah has created everything on this earth from water. In fact, human beings, if we remember, human beings are exploring the solar system and other planets, and they are trying to look if there are any signs of water. Because if there are signs of water, that means there should be some life somewhere. Life is created from water. However, this and other issues should not distract us from getting the best out of our life as of today. That is the bottom line, that we are here and we should look at it, that what is going to happen in the future. There is no harm in looking at the past as well, and also spending some thinking on this, that how did we arrive first and how things got to where we are as of today. And science does help with this. But the issue before us is, what are we going to do with the life we have? It's a finite life. It's an infinite life in this world that we can waste as much time as we want. So we don't have a luxury of plenty of time to be wasted on those things. And that is why Quran draws our attention and just says that the life began from coming together of clay and water. And then, of course, through the evolutionary process, it developed and reached the stage of man. These point to a well-planned and precisely directed process of evolution in the physical world, which led to the creation of man with divine energy, which has given us the traits of choice and intent. Now the issue before us is to bring out all latent potentials related to this earthly life of ours. We can spend a lot of time on these things if this brings out any of our latent potentials, which can be of any help in the hereafter. And this is something which is should be very crystal clear to us. And this is something which we need to focus on. And if something does not promote that, then we got a fair amount of idea how life started, and then we should get on with the life. We should get on with the job of developing ourselves for the system of Deen. Since Earth's earlier environment was very hot, hence there resided a species in it which had the ability to tolerate heat, i.e. it could tolerate higher temperatures better than us. And this is important. Interestingly, the Quran has told us that when initially planet was very hot, and it had to have some kind of a creation which could tolerate those high temperatures. But Quran has not distracted us by going into those details. The Quran has not gone into any further details as to whether they possessed free will or not, etc. It should not be of any concern to us, as the Quran states, تِلْكَ أُمَّةٌ قَدْ خَلَتْ لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ وَلَكُمْ مَا كَسَبْتُمْ وَلَا تُسْأَلُونَ عَمَّا كَانُوا يَعْمَلُونَ. That these were the people, Ummah, as people, Quran says, are nations who have gone away. And on their account, you will not be asked. And what you will be asked is that what you did. So see how Quran focuses its attention and asks us to focus on this issue, that what you are going to do in this life, and that is what is important. While we should be aware of that, we should gain knowledge, what has gone in the past, but not to that extent where we make that as part of our life, our aim of life, and we forget the immediate issues before us and the future issues before us. If Deen does not get established, then all these pursuits will go wasted. One aspect on which the Quran puts emphasis is that we have finite time here in this life, and we need to utilize it optimally using its guidance. Next verses 28 and 29, pointing to the relationship between man and Malaika. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي خَالِقٌ بَشَرًا مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ فَإِذَا سَوَّيْتُهُ وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي فَقَعُوا لَهُ سَاجِدِينَ. And your Rabb told the Malaika, the forces of nature, that I am about to commence the creation of man from sounding clay of dark mud. So when this happens, that after passing through different evolutionary stages of life, he reaches that point where there is a precise proportion and balance established in him, and I breathe into him a quintessence of my energy, and in this way becomes possessor of choice and intent, and a being possessing a human self, then bow down before him. Very interesting two verses, and let us reflect a bit further on these two. It helps to understand the evolutionary process functioning in the world Rububiyyat proceeds in stages. As thinking beings, some of us do think about the first human being and how did we reach the present era as a human race. This question is also before the Quran, and if it is from Allah who initiated human creation, then He should provide clues to this creative process as well as the progress of this evolution, i.e., where it is heading. If the Quran has informed us that the beginning of life on the planet was from the coming together of clay and water, then this life cell progressed and branched off into various species, culminating into the human form together with numerous other animals. And the signs of the previous species, like dinosaurs, we can find them on the planet Earth. And the science of evolution has pointed to these things, and there is a lot written onto that. The important point to note is that now the Quran is addressing our intellect as we possess the cognitive potential which gives us choice and intent. In the process of creation, a stage reached in the animal link where further progression was to be through reproduction. And that is something important for us, that our body also, which belongs to the animal domain, progressed like that, and we branched off from other animals, just other animals as they branched off from the previous species. And through this evolution, then we reached the stage of our human body where the reproduction cycle starts through biological process. However, in the case of man, a step change occurred during the development of the human child, through which then the Quran says, Summa anshanahu khalqan akhara fatabarakallahu ahsanul khaliqeen. And we have gone through this verse previously as well, but over here I will put some light on this, that after going through the stages of child's development within mother's uterus, the Quran says it reaches that stage, Summa anshanahu khalqan akhara, that a new creation comes out of it. And if we remember, the Quran says that then we gave it divine energy. And this is the one stage where human beings, they become human, going through the animalistic development within mother's uterus. And the second point is for tabarakallahu. And the root of this is be, re, kaf, and that is B-R-K. And it is built into this root that whatever, wherever this appears, the entity of the thing will have the ability to stand on its own right and then grow. So the growth is part of this root, and then it develops. And this is very interesting here, because Quran says, Tabarakallahu, then Allah is the one who has created it in a way that if it follows Allah as a model, then it is going to become what it is intended to become. That is, it will bring out all its latent potentials. He became possessor of choice and intent, a new creation. This is where the Quran invites us to remain focused and capitalize on what we have as latent potentials within us. So this issue of latent potentials and our choice and intent does not go away as we proceed and study the Quran. So we need to keep it in mind, and the more we will develop these potentials, the more of these will come out, our understanding of the Quran will become better and better. In the second verse, 1529, when it is noted, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي, divine energy is breathed into it. Our creation is not an ordinary creation. It is a tremendous creation with tremendous potentials. And these potentials which we are manifesting in this life, even without the guidance of the Quran, we can witness it all around us. When we start manifesting additional potentials by coming to the Quran, then of course our journey becomes exponentially higher. And this is something to which Quran draws our attention repeatedly, which made him eligible for employing the universal forces for his benefit. So not only he recognizes when we come to the guidance of the Quran, not only we recognizes each of these forces which are playing an effective role, an important role in our life, but we also enhance our imagination, our thought process, where we can utilize them even more effectively for the good of everyone. Once this child grows up physically and intellectually, he reaches a stage where he starts to make choices. This is where we reach a stage of needing guidance to make those choices which also take into account the life of the hereafter. Next two verses 30 and 31, man arrives in an extremely challenging environment. Over here, Quran says, Sajad al-malaikatu kulluhum ajma'un illa iblisa aba an yakuna ma'as sajidin. Thus, according to this program, all the forces of the universe bowed before him, that is man or Adam, i.e. this trait was put into man that he could harness the forces of nature. Of course, to harness those forces of nature, he has to understand them first, make an effort to understand them. But his own rebellious emotions, which are called Iblees, did not bow before him. They refused to do this and adopted transgression. Very interesting over here that all malaika, kulluhum ajma'un, they became willing, subservient to by Adam. Illa Iblees, of course, he was different from these forces because these forces do not have choice and intent. But over here, Iblees had the choice, and that is why he could rebel, he could disobey. And that is the important point, that human beings, Iblees has got a relationship with the man, with Adam. Finally, verses 30 to 31, Adam warned about the existence of potential dangers within his own psyche. In the first verse, Malaika are placed at the disposal of Adam to be utilized according to the choices made by him. However, this was not unconditional and is tied to the functioning of the law of requital and the law of respite. In the second verse, Adam is forewarned about the existence of Iblees and of course Shaitan within a psyche which has certain default state. Here Allah has pointed to the aspect of going against the laws of Allah which will be detrimental to his individual and collective existence in case he wishes to follow his unbridled desires, emotions and intellect. Here the Quran has differentiated this aspect by stating that all Malaika bowed down before Adam without any exception because these are external to man in terms of their existence. Because Malaika existed outside it, they were not part of his psyche. Of course, there are certain psychological forces which come into existence when he follows the guidance of the Quran. And those emerge because those are as potentials they come out. Whereas Iblees is within him and hence he needs to become aware of his proclivities and vices. For this, the Quran has put forward the program of وَيُزَكِّهِمْ وَيُعَلِّمُهُ الْكِتَابَ وَالْحِكْمَةَ وَإِنْ كَانُوا مِنْ قَبْلُ لَفِي ضَلَالٍ مُبِينٍ. Very clearly, Quran says that if you do not come to the Quran, then you are not going to develop yourself because you are not following the book. You will not have the knowledge of the book and the wisdom to apply the permanent values and of course utilize the divine attributes. And over here that is why it says Lafiz al-Alim Mubin. Without it, you will always be misguided. And this is something about which we should be very clear and make it clear to those as well who say at times that what will happen to those who do a lot of good and what will be there hereafter. And these are important things to understand when we study the Quran. In order to help them develop their selves, the system needs to educate them with the knowledge of the Quran. We are doing this together. And of course, we are going through this process ourselves so we can understand that how much we are benefiting from this mutual interaction. Understand the rationality behind its commands and instructions and to monitor it on a continuous basis using its criteria to judge our progress of self-development. This path we cannot follow blindly. We have to continuously look at the development side of ourselves, that as we are progressing through this higher understanding, are we benefiting with it? Is it improving our behavior and conduct in the outer world, i.e. where we started it and where we are at every point in time. The point regarding excluding Iblees from the category of Malaika in these two verses to be kept in mind. Here the Quran has made it clear that none of the Malaika possesses choice, hence Iblees prostrated as told, while Iblees possessing choice and intent could decide whether to obey or not. This places Iblees within Adam as the dialogue is about Adam. And this aspect will become clearer as we will move on to next set of verses. And here I come to the end of this presentation. Thanks for your time and for sharing this presentation. Thank you.